In a bit of a twist out of Washington, Section 899, known as the revenge tax, has been pulled from that One Big Beautiful Bill Act. The move reverses what could have been a costly tax change for Canadian investors. So, what now? Nicole Ewing, Principal Wealth Planning Office, TD Wealth, joins us with a look at the implications. Nicole, always great to have you with us.
Great to be here.
You've been following the story very carefully. We've spoken to you on several occasions just in the past 2 weeks about this. So we have this big development right now. What does this potentially mean for when we talk about tax exposure for Canadian investors?
So this was a recommendation from the U.S. Treasury Secretary to scrap this. It was accepted and followed through by the U.S. Congressional Joint Committee on Taxation, so that's both the House and the Senate, and they agreed to pull this. And what it essentially does is puts us in the status quo situation that we are currently in. So what that is for Canadians who are investing in U.S. exposure through their investments would be, so generally speaking, there's a 30% tax withholding that would apply, but by treaty that's reduced to 15%, that's dividend income. And it's reduced to 15% in your non-registered account, in your TFSA, FHSA, RESP, in your retirement fund, so your registered retirement, RRSP, LIF, LIRA, RIF, it's reduced to zero. What this would have done is increased that by 20%, maybe more, depending on how the rule is going to play it out. But we're going to keep the status quo there. With respect to real estate, there was potential that there would be increasing U.S. Real estate held by Canadians who are disposing of that property. Currently, 15% withholding, that potentially would have gone up to 35%. That's also going to be status quo at 15%. So all to say, current rules will continue to apply. We won't have that sort of shock of an increase of tax that people were really concerned about.
So even though we're at status quo, you talked about dividend treatment, capital gains, impacts. Is there still reason to pay attention here?
I would suggest there is. So whenever you are invested in foreign investments and you have that exposure, it's important to be mindful of the fact that we don't know what's going to happen either by foreign governments, foreign circumstances that may happen, whether it's the U.S. or otherwise. So we want to be mindful of our comfort with that. So if this shook you up, if this made you think, oh dear, this is going to have a really big impact on me, this would be an opportunity to reflect and think, am I appropriately diversified? Is my risk tolerance it's still what it was when I set up my holdings? And so really thinking about if something like this were to change, are you set up for success as best as possible? We can't control the future. We know that, interestingly, the Senate did not push back on this as much as some people may have expected. So we have the House bill that went to the Senate, and had this not been removed entirely, there was not going to be significant changes to what had been proposed, at least on early days. So I say that we want to keep our eyes open and be mindful that things can change anytime. There's other sections of the bill that could potentially impact investors in other ways as well. So yeah, keep our eyes open.
I often think, like even in our regular lives, when we dodge a bullet, we escape the worst case scenario. It does make us rethink certain things about how we've been going. Is this an opportunity maybe to talk some about tax efficient estate planning? Well,
so from an estate planning perspective, interestingly, what the bill also contains, the big beautiful bill, also contains is an increase to the U.S. Tax exemption amount for estate tax. And so Canadians do potentially have exposure to this. They also have a filing requirement. So if you have U.S. Citus assets, which includes U.S. securities, and you have more than 60,000 US a value there, you are going to have to file a tax return or a report with the US government, or your estate will need to do that. To the extent you are in excess of the exemption amount, currently $13.99 million, set to sunset on December 31st down to half of that amount. If you have assets in excess of that, you would be subject to U.S. estate tax. So what the bill does now is increases the 13.99 that was going to drop by half to 15 million going forward, and it will be indexed into the future. So this essentially is going to potentially reduce tax exposure, but also it's a good reminder for Canadians that you are subject to these foreign rules. So we don't have Section 899, we don't have the changes to the dividend income and some of the other changes, but we do still have to be mindful that there is estate planning considerations if you have U.S. exposure.
You always do such a great job of breaking it down in terms that we can all understand. At the same time, these issues are complex.
Yeah.
It sounds like if someone's listening to this conversation and saying, okay, it's not going forward, there's still things I need to think about, maybe they should be talking to someone.
I really suggest that. I mean, these are complex rules, and a lot of people were caught off guard with this, just even knowing that there is withholding tax when you have, U.S. exposure in your non-reg accounts and other non-retirement accounts. And so, if you weren't aware of that, because this withholding sometimes happens, it's behind the scenes before the distributions are made to you. And so, if this is all new to you, get familiar with the current rules. Or alternatively, you can outsource all of this concern, all of this worry, the requirement to stay up to date and diligently be involved. So hiring professionals to take that worry on for you and to make sure who have the expertise and the insights behind the scenes to make sure that they are looking out for your best interests is a great idea.